atmosphere with carbon dioxide. The other thing that I would add is that for women in Africa, I am certainly not against the full distribution of contraceptives. So we do know that women all over the world still don't have the full access to contraceptives and other reproductive services that they would like. What I am suggesting, however, is that providing full access to contraception in Africa will not solve our climate problem.
So you believe that family may be a part of this solution, but I wonder if you are concerned at all about some of the things that we've seen in the past. For instance, in the 1970s, fears of overpopulation were behind a program in India to sterilize millions of men, and that has happened more recently in India and in China, places around the globe. I mean, do you think that we are at some risk here with these conversations about overpopulation, that something more coercive could happen?
Absolutely. I think we have always been at that risk, and that is something that I focus on closely in my book. So the book chronicles the history of how these scientific conversations around environmental conservation or preventing the spread or intensification of climate change, how these kinds of conversations have historically justified coercive population control measures that abuse human rights. And I'm very concerned that the return of a focus on overpopulation or human population numbers could also usher in these more coercive measures.
Can you give me some other examples that you've seen throughout history that alarm you?
Yes, well, right here in the United States, actually, there's a long history of population control. We tend to focus on countries like India or China. China, of course, is notorious for its one-child rule, which has led to a number of coercive abuses, including frequently sex-selective abortions and fining people for having more than 2 children. But right here in the United States, there is a long history of sterilizing low-income women, women of color, particularly those who are on welfare, without their knowledge or without their consent. So in the 1970s, there were a number of cases that became very popular in which minors, as young as the ages of 12, went into the hospital or went to a clinic to receive other kinds of services, and they came out sterilized without their knowledge. This is not just in the past, and it's not that far away from us.
I hear you. Obviously, that is not something anyone wants to see, but do you believe that global population, is not a threat to the natural world?
What I think is a threat to the natural world is overconsumption of resources. I really want to focus the attention there because in the places like the US, like China, like India, where we already see birth rates coming down, we still see an intensification of the consumption of resources. Now we see an ongoing rapid acceleration of greenhouse gas emissions and climate change. And so what I'm suggesting is that interventions into population growth in these places have not made a dent when it comes to the rapid pace of climate change. And I think we should really be focusing on the ways that we consume and the economic systems that drive that consumption.
That's Jade Sasser, Professor of Gender and Sexuality Studies at the University of California, Riverside. Professor Sasser, thanks so much for speaking with us.
Thank you.
Your thoughts at herenow.org.
Supporting WHYY Salesforce, Relationship Management Solution. Salesforce brings customers and companies together and is committed to delivering the personalized experiences that customers want. More at salesforce.com/Philly. And Flatiron Books, publishers of The Guest Book, the new novel from Sarah Blake, author of The Postmistress. Following 3 generations of a powerful American family, The Guest Book shows how secrets and betrayals can ripple through the years. Available now.
How can squeezing hydrogen between 2 diamonds make the next super material? The frustrating quest for the most elusive material in physics on Science Friday. That's coming up next at 2 here on WHYY. And then later this afternoon, on All Things Considered, Maria Butina is behind bars for conspiring to act as a foreign agent for Russia. Her first media interview since she was sentenced is on All Things Considered this afternoon starting at 4 here on WHYY.
Funding for Hero Now comes from WBUR Boston and your NPR station, and from Staples with print and marketing solutions for business, including color copies and presentations,
visitors to porn sites will have to show a government ID or volunteer their credit card information to prove they're old enough to access the adult content. The new rule, designed to keep kids from stumbling across porn on the internet, is the first of its kind and is raising privacy concerns in the UK. For more, let's bring in Ben Brock Johnson, who covers tech for Here and Now. Hi, Ben.
Hi, Jeremy.
So how did this law come about?
So this particular law and the rule that we're talking about here got started by members of the UK's Conservative Party a few years ago during campaigning back in 2015 and 2016. It has gained steam ever since, and it's got a basis in preserving traditional cultural mores, right? The origin is pretty vague. It's part of this Digital Economy Act of 2017. You know, it touches on everything from like lending out e-books to selling tickets online, and of course, porn.
So how are they going to enforce it?
Great question. There's a pop-up page that's supposed to be on every one of these sites that does not feature porn and kind of forces users to jump over this wall. The British Board of Film Classification is supposed to check porn websites to make sure they're actually doing this. But really, it's the porn providers themselves that have to build the age check technology. So there's a bunch of different options floating around depending on where you're going for this content.
Do the porn providers think that they're going to lose customers because of this? Because people, even if they are of age, they're not going to want to give over their name and ID to get into the porn site.
This is a really good question. I think that there are some interesting aspects to this that could benefit some of these providers, right? So underlying all of this needing to provide a proof of identification as a person, these sites are going to be able to build the beginnings of what could be a paywall or payment technology. So yes, it's being sort of handed down by the government. Yes, these sites do have to do this, and I'm sure that they're not happy about having to build that technology. But at the same time, that technology could lead to a new profit stream or a new revenue stream of some of these sites.
Some porn sites already cost money.
Yeah, that's true. Although in the last probably 7 or 8 years, there's been a huge conglomerate called MindGeek that provides a lot of this content for free, and that's a whole other kind of fascinating story about how users online really want their content to be free. This is why so many sites, both adult and non-adult, are free and ad-supported, and pornography is no different.
And as has been said before, if you're getting something for free online, you're not the customer, you're the product.
Exactly, and I think, you know, again, a lot of these companies that are providing this, not only the third-party companies, but the pornography companies themselves, are, I think, probably intrigued at the idea of getting more data on their users. Of course, the suggestion there will be, we're going to give you content that you're even more interested, the best of what you actually want. But of course, they're collecting data on you and leveraging that.
Are there ways that kids would be able to get around the age verification rule in the UK?
I feel like this is a story as old as time, Jeremy, in a way, right? Like, kids will always find a way to access content that is not for them. So yes, for sure, I think that will happen. You know, probably in some ways that nobody has even imagined yet. Also, this law doesn't seem to do much to address social media, and there's a lot of pornography already existing on various social media sites. There are also other things worth considering: virtual private networks, or VPNs, and so-called VPN tunneling. So as a user, you might pretend to be outside of the UK using this VPN technology in order to access this content.
Is there a lot of opposition to this new law?
I think it depends on who you ask, right? So I think there are a lot of users and consumer-focused organizations that are really concerned about privacy here, right? There are a lot of people who don't feel great about the idea of a pornography company having your personal identifying information. That company could be hacked, they could not have good data security protocols, and your personal information could be put right next to all of your porn browsing habits for everyone to see. So I think there are a lot of people concerned about that. But in general, I think there has been some political support for this, at least among those who support the Conservative Party in the UK, and that's why it survived this long.
Is something like this being talked about in the United States?
I haven't seen evidence
right now, so many sites in the U.S., we now have to say, yes, I accept cookies because of the Europeans who require that.
Totally. And it would also be really interesting to see people logging into some of these sites with tools like Twitter or Facebook or something like that in order to identify them.
That's Ben Brock Johnson, who covers tech for Here and Now. Thanks, Ben.
Thank you.
And Here and Now is a production of NPR and WBUR in association with the BBC World Service. I'm Jeremy Hobson.
I'm Peter O'Dowd. This is Here and Now.
Funding for Here and Now comes from the listeners of WBUR Boston and from Indeed, used by over 3 million businesses for hiring, where employers can post job openings, then use screener questions at an online dashboard to identify qualified candidates. Learn more at Indeed.com/hire.
On the next Fresh Air. I'm not sure about this part where I say I want to be president for all Americans. I mean, do I? You know, all of them? The finale of HBO's satirical political series Veep is this Sunday. We'll feature interviews with 2 of the stars, Julia Louis-Dreyfus and Tony Hale, and the showrunner, David Mandel. Join us this afternoon at 3 and again tonight at 7 on WHYY.
Science Friday is next on WHYY. It's 1:59.
Supporting WHYY, the Penn Center for Women's Behavioral Wellness is conducting research on stress response in healthy women. The Penn Center for Women's Behavioral Wellness is seeking women experiencing regular menstrual cycles and not using hormones or psychiatric medication to participate in this research study. If you are interested in contributing to women's health research, details at 215-746-1157 or PennPMS.com. That's 215-746-1157 or PennPMS.com.
This is WHYY-FM Philadelphia, WNJN FM 89.7 Atlantic City, WNJZ 90.3 Cape May, WNJB FM 89.3 Bridgeton, WNJM 89.9 Manahawkin, and WNJS FM 88.1 Berlin.
What do you get when you crush hydrogen gas between 2 diamonds? A superconductor. I'm Ira Plato, and this is Science Friday. This hour, it's the hunt for new superconductors, and no, we're not talking about the next Leonard Bernstein. These are materials that can perfectly conduct electricity, and scientists are pulling them out of thin air. Hydrogen, specifically, will